posted in the chat, you will see a link to Airtable. Any public comments can be made through the Airtable form. And if you are requesting to speak live, you can designate that in the Airtable form. We will circle back to public comments at the conclusion of our informational updates. And with that, I will give the floor to Bill.
Thank you, Gloria. I'm going to save most of my comments for the COVID update, but I just want to say to our staff, our students, and their families who celebrate Christmas, we wish you a very Merry Christmas and a happy and very healthy vacation period. Please stay healthy as much as you can. Let's see if we can continue to work together to reduce the incidence of transmission of the virus. But I wish you a very, very enjoyable holiday.
Carrie?
I echo those sentiments, and I am very proud of the staff, students, and parents for getting to this point. I think people are sort of trekking along and looking forward to that Wednesday afternoon finish line to be able to take a breather, but everybody has done such a tremendous job over the past several months making these learning opportunities valuable for students given the restrictions. I also just want to share a quick Title I update. As you know, we received Title I funds, and with those funds, because the Miller School was a top priority school to use these funds, we hired a new adjustment counselor using these grant monies. And we had additional funds left over after we made that hire. So we amended the grant and recently got approved for 4 academic tutors, 2 of which will be at the Miller School and the other 2 will be at the Robinson School. So both of those principals are in the process of interviewing. Each of those individuals who are hired will work for 3 hours a day, and their focus will be to help support students who are struggling with the asynchronous work. For the students who are not able to necessarily stay on task as much as they would if they were in school during their at-home week. So we're thrilled to be able to offer that additional service to those schools that have been identified as priority schools based on our low-income students. So that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Carrie. Ingrid, finance update?
Just real quick, that we did include in your packet a prioritized summary for capital. I know there's a lot on tonight's agenda, but if you have questions, we can address those at the January 4th meeting. But we were able to take a few things off. Originally, we had requested $782,000, and we're now down to $219,500. Everything on the list originally was important, but we realize it's going to be very tight this year. And then I know everyone has been following what's happening in Washington. The stimulus bill, I believe, is being signed today. There is $54.3 billion set aside for K-12 education. What is the tricky part is how they decide to allocate it and what criteria. Originally, they had talked about tying it to Title I, so that may limit some of the funds that we received, because last year we weren't Title I, but it's really premature until we see the apparently 1 foot thick, 5,000 plus page bill. And then at your next meeting, I will give you an update on exactly where the CARES funds that we've received and spent so far have gone, both on from the funds we received on the municipal side and that were administered through the Department of Education. And that deadline has been moved, whereas all the spending had to occur by this January 30th, 2020. The stimulus bill has extended that deadline to December 30th, 2021. That's it for now.
Great, thank you. Any questions on that for the moment? Okay, any school committee updates for items that aren't otherwise on the agenda? Anything? Okay. All right. Student representatives, updates from Brian or Hannah? Oh, I think you're on mute, Hannah.
I can go now. We agreed that she could go first last time, but oh, right now students are doing good. We had a Spirit Day for Pod B, which a lot of the seniors I know were like really excited for it. I wasn't there. I'm Pod A, so or that our Pod A Spirit Week is or Spirit Day, so it's like a holiday winter Spirit Day that we're gonna have. So that was like really nice for students. We're also doing a food drive right now for the Westford Food Pantry. So if you're any parents on here at WA, send your kids to school with food or like non-perishable items for tomorrow morning and Wednesday morning. And other than that, everything's going pretty good. Looking forward to a nice break, well-deserved break, I think.
Absolutely, makes total sense, Brian. I think we lost a connection with Hannah, but I'm guessing she's echoing that sentiments. And absolutely wave a hand at me, Hannah, if there's something else we missed. I said I would circle back to public forum. I'm not seeing any on my notice. Any other school committee members seeing anything at this time?
So I saw someone raise hand from the public.
Okay, I may not have that on my screen.
Judy Culver.
Does anyone know the substance of the comment?
I don't know, but
Don't see it in Airtable.
yeah, she raised her hand on Zoom. So if you click on participant, you can see like one attendee raise hand.
All right. Judy, can you send a message in the chat and let us know if you had a question or if you were looking to speak live? And perhaps while we're waiting on that, we can always circle back as needed. Bill, would you like to go ahead and start the COVID update? I think you're on mute, Bill.
I have to be reminded of that at least once every meeting, I guess, so I apologize. The COVID numbers continue to increase, although not at the same accelerated rate that we saw about a week and a half ago. We are seeing an increase in both the positive cases and the close contacts, and they are continuing. I had a leadership team meeting this morning, late this morning, and at that meeting, it was discussed topic of a 2-week remote period after the vacation period was discussed. The rationale for that being that would represent an appropriate quarantine period for all of those families who might be traveling or wind up in close contact. Now, I did check in with the COVID advisory committee on that suggestion. And I am not going to recommend that. What I am going to recommend is that we continue on with the intent of starting back in a hybrid model right after the vacation week. However, I will be monitoring the numbers throughout the vacation period. I'm going to ask the principals to stay in touch with their staff because it is the staffing and the lack of staffing in the schools that will bring us to a problem in terms of being able to educate our students faster than anything. So I will not be making the recommendation, as I said, to go remote for the 2-week period beyond the vacation period. And instead, I will recommend, and I'm making that decision. It's actually the administrative decision that I'll monitor the situation carefully. I'll advise you during the vacation week if I think we're in trouble with staffing in any of the buildings, and I'll address that accordingly.
Any questions from the committee on this? I certainly understand these are difficult calls, it's difficult decisions. I understand some districts might be doing preemptive 2 weeks. I think I fully want to hear and respect the concerns from the building principals. Absolutely, we have to have adequate staffing for the buildings. And I think given that there's so much uncertainty, closely monitoring the situation does make sense. I know the questions are also been raised as to whether this is really a school committee call. The superintendent and I've discussed it, and we really feel that given the conditions of uncertainty, that it really is appropriate for it to be an administrative decision. It's a question of health and safety and a question of staffing availability. So I think we need to leave that to your discretion, Bill, during the vacation to make that determination. I saw some questions. Alicia.
So no one wants anyone to work over vacation, but I guarantee that people will want to know if the school district dashboard will be updated next week. I know the Board of Health will be open, but will the school district dashboard be updated?
Yeah, so it'll be updated this week and it will be updated next week also.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Valerie?
I think it falls under this agenda topic. Can you either Bill or Carrie speak to if you're seeing a lot of shuffling between programs as we're kind of coming up to January? Are students or families changing? Any shuffling of staff?
No, I can't say we have a lot of shuffling of staff. We have, out of all of the staff who took a leave under the Families First Corona Response Act, there are only 3 right now who have requested for very legitimate reasons an extended leave, unpaid leave through the remainder of the year that I've granted. Other than that, during the school days, during the school weeks, we have not observed a lot of shuffling at all. We do have some staff who are teaching remote on a remote basis that from their home for various health-related reasons. And we have a monitor in the classroom. Sometimes there's a little challenge in having the classrooms monitored, but to this point in time, I think we've been very successful in being able to do that. And so, Carrie, I don't know if you have any different perspective on that.
No, I agree with everything you said, Bill. And I do know that one of the difficulties is, when there are multiple close contacts, just providing the coverage. And a lot of times principals and assistant principals are in the classrooms covering, which then makes it difficult to do their administrative work. So I do know that it felt much more difficult over the past couple of weeks where the numbers really rose, but hopefully those begin to level off. And our hope is that if we do come back, that we don't experience a similar or greater surge than we did after Thanksgiving.
Sorry, I guess I meant any students switching.
From remote to hybrid?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay.
No, those switches, there are some in each of the buildings, but they're manageable. There's a small handful. Parents have been great being patient with us. There have been a couple of times where we've had to shift a student going from hybrid to remote, for example, to a different school because the remote classrooms were awfully full and there was space in other schools, and parents have been incredibly appreciative and flexible. So that has been very manageable.
I think flexibility is a key for this school year, as we're finding out, and that's great to hear that parents are able to be flexible and that everyone's making it work. Again, a theme for this school year. There was one comment in the from the public supporting continuation of hybrid learning and providing as much in-person learning as possible, especially if spread is not coming from the schools. So certainly an echo of support for that. Other questions, comments, Valerie?
Sorry, I just remembered another one. Can someone speak to the state regulation on structured learning time? I know that kind of made the news a little bit last week.
Yeah, I'll start off. I will say that Kerry and several of the principals have worked very hard on addressing that particular issue. We will be submitting something to the state. We have until, I believe it's January 19th, if I recall correctly, to comply or receive a waiver. Kerry, I'll let you fill in the rest since you've done a lot of the work on that.
Yeah, and it's something that, while we understand the spirit behind it, it was a little difficult because the model wasn't built under that premise. And so it seems like the goalposts are changing on us after the fact and after we had negotiated a model that seems to be fairly successful. So we are short on the 35 hours over the course of 2 weeks of structured learning time. That's the hours count for the time where students are in person or live online versus the asynchronous independent time. So we are working with the WEA on how to address that without creating any sort of overhaul to our system. We think that we can do that in a way that is not so disruptive to the model, but it will take some work and discussion, and so that has begun.
I had an additional question. I know we discussed this at length at our last meeting, but we've certainly had a lot of public inquiry since that time. And I was wondering if, Bill, you could just summarize for the community, for anyone watching at home, kind of what steps have been taken kind of since our last meeting. I know regarding winter sports, I know you met with the affected coaches and the COVID advisory committee revisited it. So if you could just summarize that for the public, I think.
Yes. I had a meeting. I thought I owed it to the coaches. I told the coaches I'd be glad to meet with the respective teams also, because I think one of the strong points in our school system has been the trusting, respectful working relationship that we've developed, all working together over the years. And it was a very good meeting. Certainly the coaches expressed the disappointment, but we're very respectful in understanding the decision that I made. And I know that we are receiving some emails from parents, and very disappointed parents, some from students. But we did have a revisit with the COVID advisory committee also, in discussing not only sports, but some other alternatives that would engage students. And the committee was not in favor of that, certainly, with the understanding that our ultimate objective is to try and keep all students and all staff as safe as possible and keep them in the school building. So that, we did revisit the issue. I did speak with the coaches, but, I'm certainly still remaining with my decision on basketball and hockey, to the disappointment, obviously, and I understand this greatly, the students, to the coaches, and to their respective families.
Thank you, Bill. I know we've gotten a number of emails and public comment, and certainly do sympathize for all of the students who are impacted by this decision. Any other questions from the committee about anything we've discussed so far, or is there anything else remaining in your update, Bill?
No, I just want to say that we have received a number of emails from parents thanking us for making a difficult decision and keeping all students and staff as safe as possible. So that we understand the disappointment, but also it's been a little bit gratifying in receiving some correspondence from people who support the decision and bring a somewhat different perspective to it.
Yes, the school committee has also received, a number of communications from staff members echoing that same sentiment. That it does it does lend some consistency to all of our health and safety practices, which I know, while difficult, is what we're striving to maintain. I see there is a comment in the chat from Judy Culver. Thank you for submitting that, Judy. It is pertaining to our next agenda item, so perhaps we will address it at that time. I think I'll now turn the floor over to Alicia, Search Committee, or I know we also have a guest joining us.
Sure. We have Dorothy Presser joining us from the MASC, and while Chris brings her in, I just wanted to thank everyone in the public who has participated in the process so far. We had, I think it was 42 attendees at our focus groups. We had 343 participants in the survey, and we've had some people joining our meetings themselves as well. We had some former school committee members join us, Judith being one of them. We had a current CPAC member join us. So it's been great to have the public feedback all along. And tonight, Dorothy is with us to share the report from the leadership profile. So I'm going to turn it over to Dorothy.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to meet all of you who I've only met a few of you before, so this is really a great opportunity. Just let me update you quickly to where we are in the search process. We have, as Alicia said, had a number of focus groups and put out the survey. The intent of doing that is to gather information from the stakeholders about sort of where the district is right now and where they see the skill set, the experience, the attributes, so forth of the next educational leader, what that person needs to be successful in the district. And it was great to do all the focus groups and meet a bunch of people from Westford. The information from the focus groups and the feedback on the survey was all very consistent. I hope you've all had a chance to read it. Clearly, there is a pride in the Westford Public Schools and the high-performing district, what the service that is given to students, the caring of the teachers, and so forth. There's always challenges in a district, always things people are looking at. How can we move forward? How can we be on that path of continuous improvement? We're doing really well, but we don't want to sit still. So people were looking at some of the challenges, some of the tough budget years that you've had that may persist going forward, the issue that many districts are talking about right now of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and and some of the challenges that the budget cuts may have engendered in terms of maybe some staff or some program cuts. And then getting to the leadership, what are people looking for in the next leader? Of course, they want a leader who can keep the good things going and have the skill set to address some of the areas where people feel things need to be addressed. So we take that information and we use that along with information that the subcommittee gave us about the district and turn that into a brochure that will become the basis for the advertising. We also use the focus group information and the survey information to develop the leadership profile that you all saw. That goes obviously to you, and it goes to the screening committee that will be working to screen the applications and decide who to bring in for interviews, ultimately deciding who the finalists are. And they can keep that in mind as they're forming their questions and as they're thinking about who is a good fit for the district. So I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions before I move on and maybe I'll bring up on the screen the brochure as it stands now for some feedback.
Any questions from the committee at this point? I'm just amazed at all of the work and thoughtfulness that has kind of gone into the process up to this point, and really do want to call out and express our appreciation for you, Dorothy, for joining us tonight, and for the work and support we've gotten from MASC and also from the work for our search subcommittee, Alicia, Chris, and Sean. So thank you for all the work that has gotten to this point. A superintendent search is no small endeavor. Alicia.
So before we review the brochure, I just wanted to call out for everyone that our very eagle-eyed Ingrid spotted that we had listed that we have 6 assistant superintendents. We don't, we have 5. So much information, I'm sorry we missed that, but she also suggested that because we're listing employees of the district, that we should include our van drivers and monitors. We contract out for bus, but our van drivers and monitors are our employees. So adding those to the list would be appropriate for the rest of the information that's on the list. So there are 2 small edits that will happen, but beyond that, we're
and thank you, Alicia, for pointing that out, because oh, there we go. Thank you. So thank you for pointing that out, because those changes have not yet been made. I do not have access, I don't believe, to screen share, or do I?
I think you should be able to. Give it a
Okay.
shot.
Oh, there we go. So in the brochure, there's information about the candidate you're looking for, and there's information about Westford, the Westford School District, and the Westford community. This brochure will get posted online on our website. It will get posted online on the MASS, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents website. MASC also has a list of about 1,200 people who we know are interested in superintendencies that this will go out to. We also send it to our sister organizations in all the other 50 states. And we know from past experience in talking to candidates that are really interested in superintendencies in Massachusetts very much keep track of our website and the MASS website. So this will get some good exposure once we know it's ready to go. So I have worked quite a bit with Chris and Sean and Alicia to put this together, particularly on looking at the leadership profile and the survey results to come up with the bullets of the successful candidate. So what I'm looking for tonight is if anyone sees any changes to be made other than the ones Alicia mentioned. It's always better to have more eyes on something and notice any typos or misspellings or anything like that. And if it's not ready to go tonight, I need to know who has the final sign off on saying, yes, this can go, and we can get it posted and get people thinking about applying for the position.
Ming Chen?
So in the qualification, the second bullet says master's degree required, advanced degree preferred. Is a master degree an advanced degree?
So it's funny, I had that exact same question for the first time in another district this fall. So what it's saying is really a degree beyond a master's.
Yeah, I think that needs to be clarified, because normally master degree is considered an advanced degree.
So do you have any wording, something like master's degree required, additional education preferred, or additional degree work preferred, or?
Dorothy, another option might be saying terminal degree preferred or something like that.
Well, beyond the master degree is going to be a doctor degree, right?
But it could also include a CAGS. It could also include CAGS work.
In education, is this the correct wording? I want to make sure that we are staying specific to the educational genre in wording for educational degrees.
This is generally how we advertise. This is generally the wording that we use.
If that's the typical wording used, then that the import may just be kind of understood in in this genre and realm. Although, yeah, it's interesting that the question did came up for people who may come from other fields. Other questions or comments? I think it looks great. I had, thanks to Ingrid for catching that we do have 5 assistant principals. And I think the idea of adding our bus and van our van drivers who drive in our van pool, absolutely appropriate. Everybody counts in this district, as Bill always says. Have we missed anything else that anyone's aware of? Alicia?
Yep. So someone just pointed out to me that we had included the word millennium with the integrated preschool program. Now that our preschool program is no longer housed in the Millennium building, we should remove that, but it is the Westford integrated preschool program. So that would be a third edit that we would want to make.
Okay. Okay. So substitute the word Westford for the word millennium.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I see we're kind of going over this document in a fine-tooth comb. I think it is very close to completion. I wonder if what it does make the most sense to do, however, is to authorize it with the changes we've discussed, and then also really delegate responsibility to Alicia as chair of the search committee, that if there are any additional minor editorial catches or a typo that's discovered, that we kind of empower Alicia to make those final changes before this goes to press. Does that make sense? Seeing head nods. So I'm guessing I'll was that a thumbs up or a hand, Avery? That was a thumbs up. Okay, I couldn't tell. Wasn't sure if that was a hand. Then any
Gloria,
other?
just
Yeah.
before we get there, we did have a question in the public comment about the definition of the stay the course plus move forward. And I think that's pretty clear in the criteria of the successful candidate. Our responses were very much, we want to maintain the high achieving district we have now, but there are a lot of great things that have started happening as well. A new renewed focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and on social emotional, and that's the push forward that our respondents told us that they wanted to see from the next leadership in the district.
Great, thank you for circling back to that, Alicia. I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments before we make a motion? Okay, then I would move that the committee approves moving forward with the brochure and job posting for the role of superintendent of Westford Public Schools, and that we delegate responsibility for any final editorial changes to Alicia Mallon as chair of the search subcommittee. Second. Any discussions or question about that before we vote?
One last question.
Yep.
In the criteria, it has a minimum of 10 years, and then it lists, I'm trying to toggle back and forth, so I apologize. Minimum of 10 years in education, including teaching, central office, and/or administrative experience. Does that mean that any combination of those, is that a requirement, or is that a preferred kind of, where are we with the 10 years? Again, I'm going to defer to probably to Dorothy, because this is probably one of those standards that we put in.
Yeah, generally so the minimum of 10 years would be a requirement.
Okay.
And I think that it came through very strongly, I think, in the survey that people were looking for someone who had a strong educational background. We're not really looking for someone who is going to step in who did not have a background in education. And generally, we the way the 10 years is broken out would be something that probably the screening committee would look at. You know, did they have longevity enough in the positions? I think that was another thing that came through in the survey, is people wanted a candidate who had enough longevity in the positions to be established and accomplish something in that position, rather than zip through a bunch of positions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments before I call for the vote? Okay, then vote is to Avery,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Alicia,
Aye.
Ming Chen,
Aye.
Sean,
Aye.
Valerie,
Aye.
and I. So that would be unanimous. Thank you very much. And Alicia.
So I just wanted to remind everyone that today was supposed to be the original date for the deadline for the applications of the preliminary screening committee. We have extended that date until Wednesday. I know Nina posted for us today and sent out an email. All the information on the preliminary screening committee applications is on the district website. And next week, the search subcommittee will meet to line up the slate, and Dorothy will meet with us and she'll help us try and meet all those categories that we talked about in the beginning and put together our preliminary screening committee. The preliminary screening committee is the group that's going to take all of the applicants down to 3 to 5 candidates. And at this point, I'm going to ask Dorothy to then tell us what steps are after that.
I missed what I was going to tell people.
Next steps after the preliminary screening committee.
Okay, so the preliminary screening committee brings to the school committee 3 to 5 finalists. And after that point, the school committee has quite a few busy weeks of work to vet the finalists. We will set up, it's going to be different because I'm sure we'll probably still be in a virtual world, but we would set up what would be site visits for the school committee to visit stakeholders in the finalist district. So we'll set up a bunch of calls with whoever you decide you want to talk to, parents, administrators, teachers, and so forth. The candidates will do somewhat the same thing coming to Westford. Normally they would tour a few schools and have a chance for some meet and greet and so forth. We'll set up the virtual version of that for the candidates to get to know people in Westford and people in Westford to get to know the candidates a little bit. The school committee will have final interviews with the candidates based on, obviously based on the information you get from their application packets and from those site visits. Then you'll have your final interviews and ultimately make a decision on your next educational leader.
Valerie?
Can you just clarify, are those final interviews executive sessions or public sessions?
No, once the finalists are named, everything is public.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I know Alicia's microphone cut out for part of that, so I will just clarify for anyone who missed the beginning. The deadline for applications to the preliminary screening committee has been extended until Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So anyone who is interested in participating, all of the time commitments and the dates that you would need to be available is listed on the website. It is all readily available on the school district website, westfordk12.us. And then there's a link to superintendent search information, and click to find all the information for the preliminary screening committee. And of course, if you have any questions, you can certainly reach Alicia or another member of the committee via email. Anything else at this time? Do we have any other questions for our guest? Hannah.
Can you guys hear me now? Okay. More of a general question. Is there going to be any student representation in the search committees of any kind. I was looking at the survey summary and I noticed there was not much student participation in that. So I was hoping maybe we could find a way to include student perspective more.
So I think Dorothy could probably speak to, sorry, I think Dorothy could probably speak to this a little better, but once we start doing all of those public interviews, students are 100% public, part of the public, and we would love to have your feedback in all of that. I'm glad we had the student representation we had in the surveys, but yeah, I do kind of wish we had a little bit more. So I don't know if Dorothy can speak to that, but yes, once everything is public, the students as the public should definitely be attending those public meetings.
And one of the things that we can do, I talked about setting up different visits with different stakeholders. One of the things that we can do is make sure that one of those visits is specifically for students to be able to sit and chat with the candidates a bit.
That would be fantastic. Thank you. Great suggestion, Hannah. Thank you.
Avery.
So I'm just looking at the committee, organization and screening, and I love that the dates are all there. Can pencil those all in. I'm confused to why the screening committee orientation is in February if we're naming them at the beginning of January, and then they're meeting to select the semifinalists, it looks like a week later after their orientation. So I'm just making sure that those are the right dates.
Those are the right dates, and part of the reason why we give people plenty of time is to make sure that their calendars are clear for the dates that we have set.
Got it. So the screening committee orients, and then a week later they select the semifinalists?
Yeah, so yes, as soon as the orientation happens right around the time of the closing of the application period, and we get the information to the screening committee so that they can go through all the applications and then make the decisions of who they bring in to interview as semifinalists.
Got it. Okay.
And any other questions? I'm sure this will be an ongoing process. It's not something we do frequently. It's not something we want to do frequently. So I'm glad that we have some expert guidance along the way, and I'm sure we'll all be learning more about the process as we go forward. Anything else? Okay. All right. Well, thank you to our guest. Thank you, Dorothy, for joining us. Thank you for all the support of MASC, and thank you to the search committee again for moving this process forward. It's an exciting time.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next up on our agenda, we have staff survey results. So the floor is yours, Carrie.
Thank you very much. I am going to share my screen. It's okay. Okay. Let's do this. Okay, I gotta go small here. All right, so a couple of school committee meetings ago, I had shared with you the parent survey results, and this is an opportunity for us to get a feel for, at the time, how parents were feeling, and in this case, how staff are feeling about the hybrid and RLA model that currently exists. So we want to continue to reflect and, as needed, refine what we're doing. So this information is incredibly helpful. So tonight I'd like to share the information that was provided to us via the staff survey that went out in November. So you can see we have a nice distribution of respondents from grades K up through grades 12. You may notice that we don't have preschool here because this particular survey was really geared toward the hybrid and RLA model, where there's some synchronous live in person and then some at home asynchronous learning as well. And for the preschool program, because we don't have role model students, and we created a program that was much more developmentally appropriate for that age group, it doesn't necessarily apply. But we've got as I said earlier, we have a nice distribution across all levels. So we were pleased about that. So this is really balcony level summary. All of the principals and coordinators and central office administrators received this information, and school by school were able to dive in and reflect and even take action on the data that was specific to their particular levels. So one of the first questions, similar to the parent survey, is we wanted to know, with all of the safety measures in place, are staff feeling safe at school? And you can see here the vast majority, 77.4%, say they feel safe, where 5.7% it doesn't really apply to. And then we have the 59 staff members, or 16.9%, that feel that they don't feel safe. So anytime we had a question like that where somebody answered, negatively about feeling unsafe in this case, we did then follow up with a probing question. And what we found here is those who answered that they don't feel safe, a lot of the comments, and maybe even most comments, were referencing the numbers in Massachusetts that have been increasing, and they were mentioning the anticipation of the holiday season and what that may mean. Remember, all of this was done prior to Thanksgiving. So it was kind of looking on the outside, and fortunately, much less so about some of the procedures not working in the school buildings. At the high school level, though, there were some comments around student compliance, particularly in the area of mask breaks, or even hallway passing if students are close to one another. It's something I know Principal Antonelli and the deans and the rest of the administrators are working hard to make sure that people are making the best choices while they have those less structured times. And then the other thing that came up, again, sticking with the high school level, was the wonder about, are students socializing outside of school? And are they participating in activities that might not be following the same protocols that they are here in school? So we were pleased to see that so many people are feeling safe in our schools. And the superintendent, along with his committee and subcommittee, worked really hard to make sure that we thought of absolutely everything in order to open schools safely. Then we know that staff is, they're overworked and feeling quite stretched with this particular hybrid model. I think it's the most difficult model to deliver and to execute, but given the circumstances, it was determined that this is the best model and the safest while trying to prioritize bringing students back in. So we wanted to know, are you feeling supported? And by level, you can see that the majority are feeling like they do have support. Some of the highlights were the support that the principals are providing. Some of the comments were specific to the curriculum coordinators and the assistance they provide with prepping lessons and planning for lessons and helping understand different ways to utilize technology. There was also a lot of commendations around the IT department and the digital learning department and the support, given the fact that we have every student having a device that goes back and forth to school. Clearly our ticket system just really exploded, and our staff is run thin, and those IT staff are just doing everything they can to make sure that students and staff can be successful. And then a lot of comments about the professional development that we were able to provide during the first 2 weeks prior to the students showing up. I think that it properly prepared, as much as we could, the staff for this type of learning and opened the doors for other tools that could be utilized to help augment the learning in this capacity. In terms of areas we wanted to understand a little bit for those who express that they're not feeling supported. And I think probably the most common that came out at K through 2 is they were asking for additional communication from either principals or central office to parents around expectations, because as we are scrambling as educators to provide this type of learning for students, we rely so heavily on the parents who in many cases are not at all equipped to be understanding what Google Classroom looks like and how to log on and turn in assignments. And so the teachers are the first points of contact for parents who are frustrated or who are not sure how to move forward. So we were pleased that we offered that parent evening session, and we're hoping, of course, as time goes on, that will kind of level out a bit more. And then there was also some comments about communication regarding the COVID data, and I know Bill has done a great job communicating with all principals over the course of the opening so that we could properly have a consistent message and communicate with parents around COVID cases. And I think that is something that I would imagine if staff were asked again, that would be less of a concern that was expressed. So then we had a list of attributes for this particular model, both hybrid and RLA. And it was about a list of about 12 different choices. And we asked staff members to tell us, of those choices, what's most positive and what's working well for you. Then the next question, we gave those same choices and we said, what parts are most difficult or overwhelming for you? So on this slide, it shows both of those answers. So the 5 choices that you see here, let's look at the left-hand side, the most positive, those are the most popular choices that were selected. And next to those, you see a grade span or grade spans, and that indicates that for that particular grade span, that choice was selected frequently. So interestingly, well, I guess maybe obviously, for the most positive, all grade spans shows that live in-person lessons were going swimmingly, and that's no surprise at all because that's where our teachers are most comfortable, and that's really where they know how to do their very best work because that's most typical. Now, the grade span is bolded when it was their top most popular choice. And so you can see for all 4 of the grade spans for that first one, live in person, all 4 grade spans chose that as their top most positive part of the hybrid or RLA model. So then we have communication with families. That was particular to the K-2. That was one of their top 3. And then planning and delivering remote sessions. We can see K through 8 said that this was most positive, and high school being the only span that did not select that as their top 3. Then we move on to using and implementing technology. And no surprise there that that's something that's 3 through 12, because of course, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade have more difficulty with accessing the technology. And so from a teacher's point of view, that's something that could be a hindrance. And then lastly, possessing supplies, materials, and technology. That's something that was glaring in 9 through 12, feeling like they're equipped to do what they have to do. So then moving on to the right-hand side, what's most difficult and overwhelming? Assessments came up for 2 of the grade spans, K-2 and 9 through 12. And for K-2, that was their top concern. Then we have planning and delivering live remote sessions, planning and delivering asynchronous work. And you can see here that that was at the elementary level, something that was shown to be most difficult. And again, no real surprise because it's much more difficult to draw in and engage students at the elementary level when you're not standing in front of them, even on a screen, trying to get them to have a high quality experience. And then we have engaging students in Google Meets, something from 3 through 12. That's a little bit more difficult with 6 through 8, selecting that as their top choice. That's most overwhelming. And then lastly, grading and feedback for 3 through 12. So while we wanted some of the details of the teachers and staff members' feelings around the hybrid model, we also wanted to know, well, are you looking for a change? And as we were reading through what the responses were, it was interesting because when you started to see patterns, it was easy to say, oh, it looks like they want to shift in this direction. So we decided to kind of code all of the responses because many of them were right in responses. And these are the numbers that we came up with. So you can see that the majority of people are looking to maintain the current hybrid RLA model. We had 155 select that, which was 57.2% of the participants. So the next most popular was shift to a different model that still remains hybrid. And 74 staff members selected that. And then underneath that, the italicized bullets tell us, well, within those 74, what did they say they wanted? So AARBB was a popular one of those 74 people. And that means pod A would come in Monday, Tuesday. That's AA. And then Wednesday would be R for remote. And then Thursday and Friday would be BB. So again, as we were reading through and that model came up over and over, it was easy to start to conclude the fact that people wanted to go AARBB. But then when we looked at the numbers, we saw it wasn't the majority, even though it kept reoccurring 41 times. Then others said that they wanted to do full remote just for the holidays. Others would like Wednesday full day planning because you just can't get enough time. 8 people said that, and then 12 people said, let's shift to just doing full in school days. Then moving on to the orange, you can see that 24 participants said that they'd like to go fully remote, and 18 said that they'd like to go full return. Let's bring everybody back. Now, I do want to point out that that was in early November, and then the holidays did end up coming, and we were informed by Christine Jusam, who's the acting president of the WEA, that she had sent out just kind of a 1-question survey to all staff, and there were 368 of their 500 members who responded, and 51%, I think the question was, do you want to go remote? And 51% said that they wanted to go remote, and 49% said that they wanted to stay. So I think that number of wanting to go to remote had increased since this survey based on the numbers around us because of the holiday. And then one question that we asked, or one prompt, I should say, and we found it very enlightening. And this is one piece that I think was most helpful for all of the administrators at the respective levels. And we asked staff to finish the statement. I wish the school and district administrators knew, and then we left it open. And while, I didn't want to have to share with you all of those responses, what I did was I cut or copied all of them and pasted it into this Wordle. And what it does is it takes all of the most commonly used words in that entire document, and the larger the word, the more frequently it was used. So some of the common themes, and truly as you're reading through, this is what you would see the most, and it is front and center time. Staff feel that it's very difficult to find the time, the appropriate time to continue to adequately deliver this model and do what is very best for students. Many had said that they are working long hours on the weekends, which you can see those 2 words in there as well, and having a hard time finding balance. lots of people had expressed some difficulty with the asynchronous, which you can see toward the top, the dark green, because I think that takes a lot of planning time for staff to, in advance, create lessons and activities that are engaging and aren't just, busy work. And one of the things that I think that does separate Westford in many ways is the time and the effort and that are put into our asynchronous, the asynchronous planning, and that the students are getting a lot out of it, generally speaking. So you can just look for common themes, and staff, I think it may have been a little bit therapeutic to have been filling this out. So we really enjoyed going through all of those responses to understand where staff is coming from. So with all of that said, last week we pulled together the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee, which is a subcommittee from Bill's reopening committee. And we went through some of the data and we just talked about their experiences. There's teachers on there from all levels. There's administrators on there, coordinators. And so here are kind of the 4 key takeaways. Everybody agreed that while we're in the hybrid model for now, to stay put with this hybrid model. They now know from experience that the model is working, although exhausting, it's working for students. The COVID-19 data is showing that what we're doing is working, because while numbers increase, and yes, we have reports of students and staff who are positive, and certainly close contacts, it's really not happening in the buildings, so those cases can stay contained. And then we also see from the feedback, while certainly to nobody's surprise, feedback is split, the common theme really is that we should continue doing exactly what we're doing until we have to go in one direction or another. The other piece, bullet number 2, is that we're going to provide additional training opportunities for staff starting in January, because assessments and grading were so obviously concerning to staff based on one of those questions. That's where we're going to start, in different strategies for providing assessment in a non-traditional way. And hopefully that can help support teachers and staff members who expressed that was a concern. We also were, we sent everybody out to take a look at the fully remote schedules in the case that we do have to go fully remote. When we originally created our fully remote schedules, they were kind of created in a vacuum. And even we were wondering, because it was over the summer, we were wondering if if that schedule would be needed out of the gate to open school in that way in the first place. So now that we realize we would be transitioning from this current model, if we had to go to a fully remote schedule, to that, there may be some tweaks. And now also, in addition, with the student learning time, structured learning time requirement that has changed, we also had to make sure that we were meeting that requirement. And then lastly, one of the things that had come up was that because the technology can be so difficult for our youngest learners, especially the asynchronous piece when they're not live with teachers, we do definitely want to begin, we want all students back, but we do want to begin discussions, larger discussions that would go through many different layers of course for how to bring our youngest learners back in future months. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for all of that information and input. Questions, Chris?
I don't know if I have a question. I definitely have comments, but I don't know if I have a question. I'll try to pull a question out of my comments. Just a lot of gratitude for this. I think it's really helpful. I think the teachers and the staff probably really appreciate just seeing this being presented, seeing their comments out there. And I appreciate that you don't gloss over the hard parts too, that there are challenges. You don't gloss over their exhaustion. And I think we can't, recognize that enough. and how grateful we are for all their work and making the most of this. Something else that strikes me is that how fortunate we are that the hybrid model that we've gone with under the implementation of our teachers, our staff, and our administrators, how well that's gone. That allows us, and I'm looking at your last slide, which is recommendations, because that's really, the key takeaway is, okay, where do we go from here? I think thankfully things have gone well enough that we can talk about making tweaks, and I appreciate how responsive you've been to professional development throughout the fall and trying to do things to triage and to bolster where we need bolstering and things like that. So I think that's really positive, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to just make small tweaks to what we're doing, whether it be additional professional development, or I love that you're talking about maybe we start looking at, if we were to add in-person hours, how would we do that? I think that's where we need to be. And again, it's because everyone has worked so hard to make what we have work up until now that we have that luxury of being able to do that. So I guess I don't have a question, just comments. So thank you.
Thank you.
Valerie.
Yeah, I just had a question on the kind of next, like the future model question. Could you clarify, because when you talked about the coding of the answers, was that actually a question with those answers, or you pulled that out of like their written answer parts? So I got confused there.
Yep. So, okay. So you're talking about whether or not you want to keep the model or change in future months.
Yeah.
So we had stick with the hybrid model as one choice, the current hybrid model. Another choice was let's do a hybrid model, but let's do a different one. Okay. And then the third choice was other. And at that point, that's when they indicated fully remote, fully return. And again, the hybrid, the second selection where it was hybrid but different, it did follow up to say, well, what does different look like? What are you thinking? The reason why we didn't put fully remote or fully return as an option is because it wasn't anything that we could necessarily deliver on at the time. So if 100% said we want to go fully remote and the data said differently, we just felt like, why are we offering that if we're not able to offer that yet? We wanted to give them an opportunity to say, let's go fully remote, or let's do a full return and bring everybody back. So the same piece applies to the full return.
Got it. Thanks. And I know I emailed you this earlier, but I was just kind of curious if there was a breakdown on that question by grade level.
Yep, sure. Okay, so I have numbers versus percentage, but I think you can take away the same information. So who would like to stay hybrid? The answers ranged from 35, which was the lowest, up to 44, which was the highest number of people. So 35 people in 9 through 12 said, let's stay that way. And the highest was 44, which came from grades 3 through 5. Pre-K to 2 and 6 through 8 each had 38 respondents say yes. So then I'll do the range, and if you want more detail, I can send it to you, or you can ask and I can give you the detailed numbers. So how many said hybrid but different? We had a range from 17 to 20. So 17 was the lowest. That came from grades 9 through 12 who said, yes, let's do hybrid, but let's change it. And there were 20 people at the middle school level who said, let's do that. And so then 18 and 19 were at the elementary. AARBB, we had 8 people, that ranges from 8 to 14. We had 8 people from 9 through 12. And the highest in support of AARBB was 14 people at pre-K or K to 2. Fully remote was probably the widest spread. We had our lowest grade span that supported this was 6 through 8. We had one person say, let's go fully remote from middle school. And then it went as high as 12 people at the high school. And elementary had 6 and 5. Lastly, full return. That range was from 3 to 7. We had 3 people at grade span 6 through 8, and as high as 7 people at grades 9 through 12 say, let's do a full return. And pre-K was 5 for the full return, and I'm sorry, K to 2, and grades 3 through 5, there were 3 people who selected a full return. I'm happy to send that to you if you'd prefer.
And I guess the takeaway is, for anyone that wasn't following all those numbers, if there was like a trend from a grade level, you know, obviously we've talked about the overwhelming work and trying to offset that at the elementary level. And maybe those are the kids that the data is showing, you know, COVID wise are a little bit safer. So I was just kind of curious if there was a grade level theme there.
Well, and truthfully, I think I was most surprised at how close the ranges were, with the exception of full remote. You know, looking at the majority of people who said, let's keep the hybrid as is. And, you know, our numbers were 35 people, 38 people at different grade span, 44 and 38. So that was really a trend in the direction that it wasn't like the high school really wanted to stay the same, but said, please change, this isn't working, which is always nice when the data can kind of point in a direction instead of being so all over the place.
Thank you.
I wanted to circle back to a comment from Airtable. This kind of came up earlier in terms of movement between hybrid and RLA. And this was from a staff member who commented that certainly at Westford Academy, there's been a lot of movements for students who move from hybrid to remote learning and back to hybrid based on quarantines. This teacher has also had quite a few students move from the hybrid to remote learning permanently. So she wants the school committee to know that we do have some students who have now been going to school full-time in order to address their educational needs. So students with particular special learning needs, and have been authorized to have more in-person learning time. Teachers are certainly being flexible and accommodating with these changes, but that certainly adds to the complications that they also have to deal with and are juggling right now.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the things, because of the hybrid, the hybrid model at Westford Academy, it's kind of much easier, or it lends itself more to students who are quarantining can just go home and hop in a live stream sort of way. So we don't consider that as transitioning to a different model, but it's temporary while they're home. And that is something that I do know has been, I was speaking to one of the departments on a Zoom call, and they said that that's difficult because they're planning for a certain number of students in person, and then others last minute are now, you know, pulled out. So there is certainly more fluidity at the high school level for that reason. That's right.
There was also a question from a parent who said that they didn't quite understand the discussion about the amount of synchronous learning time. And again, this got touched on briefly earlier in the meeting about the waiver regarding synchronous learning time. And can you say more about this, and how many hours is Westford currently providing versus is the state asking? And are we going to be adding more hours in the future, or are we just asking for a waiver to basically stay where we are now?
Bill, do you want me to answer this?
Sure. I mean, we do have a plan to address this in terms of increasing the amount of direct contact time. But Carrie, you want to?
Yeah, so we are short from the 35 hours. The hybrid model has to equal 35 hours on average, not for every student,
Right.
over the course of 10 days, the 2-week cycle. So we are shy of that, and we aren't looking to do anything like extend the school day. We are looking for opportunities to bring some of the asynchronous engagement over to live engagement from home. I don't see a model where we would be increasing the in-person time right now, although perhaps that the conversation evolves into that. But I think that that's the avenue we would take, is our current schedule, and then we would take some of those asynchronous times and merge them with the synchronous times where it lends itself. And from that point, we would have to resubmit to the state what our revised plan is.
I'm sure this is incredibly difficult to juggle given the different grade levels and the complex model that we're running and the state kind of moving and changing requirements as we go. But as we said earlier, flexibility seems to be the key to 2020. Other questions, concerns from the committee based on the staff feedback? There was one other comment in the chat that that I wanted to convey. Again, I believe this is a call really for in-person learning. This is, I believe, from a parent who is an ICU nurse who has been working with COVID patients for the last 9 months and has witnessed that the numbers of those testing positive, for example, in Westford, are high. But what they're seeing in the hospital setting is that people testing positive are not overloading the hospital ICUs, which was a reason for the lockdown in March. Those testing positive are often recovering and can be less symptomatic and have mild to moderate illnesses. We as an amazing community cannot take away school from our children. In Westford for the last 6 months, the number of deaths from COVID has remained at 15. So I guess that is another supportive comment from someone who is on the front lines. And thank you for your efforts there, of course, that is in support of maintaining as much in-person learning as possible. Other questions, concerns from the committee? I think that covered the public comments that I've seen so far. I'll refresh to see if there are others. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one more, another one from a teacher. I would agree with the comment from the Westford Academy teacher. I have 20 students, 2 have made complete pod switches, and 3 have had to make temporary switches due to being close contacts. It's not easy and makes the already intense planning a lot more difficult. I anticipate more of this after the holiday, which is why this teacher would support going for remote for 2 weeks post-break to mitigate those issues. So that's another important viewpoint. Other questions or concerns from the committee at this time? Okay, I'm seeing none. I understand that these choices, certainly as Bill set forth at the beginning of the meeting, very difficult to determine what will be necessary in the days following the holidays. I will certainly hope and knock on wood that everyone is safe and that our community numbers remain low, but I know this is an ever-changing climate, and I know Bill and our leadership will be watching the numbers and our ability to staff the buildings very closely. So thank you for all of your efforts. It will not be a traditional vacation. Seeing no other hands at this point, I guess we will also talk about enrollment projections.
Well, I've presented the preliminary enrollment projections to you. I will state that we had a chance to review these with the leadership team this morning because I always like to get their perspective since they are closer, more closely in touch with families and their respective school communities. I will be making a few changes. Courtney will be sitting down with me tomorrow to just take a revisit at the preschool numbers that are projected for next year. She thinks there might be a little bit of a revision there. Additionally, a couple of the principals stated that they thought that the enrollment for of those students who this year are out doing homeschooling directly related to COVID, the COVID pandemic. I was a little bit conservative in bringing all of those students back. A couple of the principals thought I might be a little bit too conservative, so I'm going to talk with them tomorrow also about the numbers. I have the numbers. Kerry was nice enough to provide me a while back with the grade level and school breakdown of all of those students who are being homeschooled directly attributable to the COVID pandemic. So I'll revisit those numbers with a couple of the principals and just make a few tweaks and send them back, send the enrollment projections back to you also.
Valerie.
I was surprised to see the projection for kindergarten go down at all three schools. I know I have a summer birthday 5-year-old that I kept at preschool for an extra year. I don't think that's terribly unusual with the pandemic. So I'm kind of expecting the kindergarten class would even grow.
What I've done, Valerie, in terms of the kindergarten projections, as you know, in George Murray's discussions with us, and George, former school committee member who has done the demographic analysis for almost 30 years now, turned it over to me for this current school year and beyond. I took the average cohort survival ratio for about the last 8 years, from birth to kindergarten 5 years hence. And I applied that to the number of births that number of children who were born and will be attending kindergarten next year. So that ratio actually turned out to be 1.67, meaning for every one child that was born 5 years ago, once we get to the next school year, 1.67 children show up for kindergarten. So that was the derivation. There is no precise methodology in terms of kindergarten and grade 1. The reliability of those numbers, as George would tell you and has told us in the past, is significantly less than the transitioning of established students in grades 2, 3, and upward. But I try to use as much empirical analysis as possible, obviously, instead of guesswork.
And wasn't there a bump last year? I mean, I remember I know NAB, I thought, needed an extra section.
Yeah, we had, I think it's about 273 thereabouts kindergartners right now. And I think I have 255, if I recall, for next year. And once again, it's based on the primary projections based on the number of births. What we don't know with certainty is the in-migration, out-migration factor. I will say that as I've said in the last year, most of the students who are arriving in Westford with their families are trending towards the grade 3 through 6 and 7 levels. Relatively few in the preschool through grade 2 level.
Sorry, one last point on this. I can't remember if it was a budget forum or one of the open houses, superintendent open houses. I thought someone suggested starting the kindergarten registration process much earlier this year to try and alleviate a lot of the stress involved with well, not a lot of it, but some of the stress involved with the full day kindergarten lottery and all of that angst. So I was wondering if that has been considered at all to move that up
We have not had a formal discussion with the K-2 principals, but we can in an upcoming leadership team meeting, or oftentimes Carrie and I will meet separately with a group of involved principals, and we'll do that coming up shortly. Because March is right around the corner, and if we're going to move it up, we need to make a decision quite quickly.
Alicia.
Bill, you started to answer a question I had about the return of the students who had decided to homeschool this year. I don't think there's an answer to this question yet because it's still so early, but do you anticipate asking parents at a certain point to notify the district of their intentions? And I'm sure that all that's going to be based on, what happens with vaccine rollouts and things like that.
Yes, I thought we'd wait a little bit into the after the first of the year, because there's so much variability ahead that could present itself to us in terms of remote, hybrid. So we will most certainly be asking all of the parents, though, if their students are going to return to the school system.
Other hands, questions? Okay. Thank you very much. I know how important these numbers are as we move into budget season next month and in the coming months. So much does hinge on these numbers. If there are no other topics, I believe we are on to warrants. And Alicia, you're up.
Thank you for sending those. Motion to approve payroll warrant 2126 SP dated December 24th, 2020 in the amount of $2,115,653.72.
Second.
And all in favor, Avery?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
And I. That would be unanimous.
Okay, motion to approve expense warrant 2126 SE dated December 24th, 2020 in the amount of $908,511.71.
Second.
Thank you. Vote is to Avery.
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
Aye. So that is also unanimous. Next one.
That would be
minutes.
motion to approve school committee meeting minutes regular session dated November 23rd, 2020 and December 7th, 2020.
Second.
And vote to Avery.
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
And I. So again, unanimous. And final one.
Motion to approve school committee executive session minutes not for public release dated November 23rd, 2020 and December 7th, 2020.
Second.
And vote to Avery.
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Alicia?
Aye.
Ming Chen?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Valerie?
Aye.
And I. That would be unanimous. And do we have a personnel update? Bill, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. It was actually strange, quite honestly, seeing my own name. on the personnel update. First time in 50 years I've seen that. But want to welcome Trudy Edwards, our new HR coordinator. She is full of energy and has joined us and is learning as quickly as possible. Has already contributed in our leadership team meetings, so we welcome her. Many of the other personnel moves you see are either FMLAs, sometimes an increase or decrease in FTE, and or replacements for people who are on leaves of some sort, whether short-term or long-term. So nothing unusual about the personnel update. It will remain fluid throughout the entire year, as you know. Avery?
Questions, Avery?
That was not in the packet. Was that something that can be posted to the packet so that the public can see it?
Yes, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that it wasn't in the packet. So we'll make sure that happens first thing tomorrow morning.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bill. Final motion of this evening, Alicia.
Okay, motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to Unit A collective bargaining in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position. The committee will not return to public session.
Second.
And roll call vote. Avery.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
And I. That would be unanimous. And thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. We will be back for our next meeting after the holidays on January 4th. And we will not be returning to public session tonight. So please have a happy holiday and be safe, everyone.
Aye.
Please have a happy holiday and be safe, everyone.
Aye.